Love under the scope.
Welcome back to Love Under the Scope. I am your host, Kelby Lauren, and in this podcast, we're going to explore all of the nuances, the ups and the downs that are associated with being in a long-term relationship with another human being. It can be nice to believe that it would be all rainbows and butterflies all the time, happy, 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 but the truth is, when we're with another person, 24/7, connected and committed to another person, there are some scary moments. There are some moments where we might feel alone. We might feel like there's something wrong with us. Maybe we're not meant to be together. And a lot of the time, that is not the case. I created this podcast because I've had moments in my own relationship where I felt there was something wrong, that I wasn't meant to be in love. I wasn't meant to have a partner. And those moments were really scary. And so I really wanted to create a place where we could talk about the nuances, the stuff that you don't see on social media. Nobody is talking really about the time they got into a huge blowout argument and managed to get through it, or the time that they navigated a really hard, stressful period, or just underlying feelings of nervousness and sadness and confusion, not knowing what's going on. And that's what I want to talk about here on this show. I am a VITA certified relationship and self-love coach. So I went through a year-long program that was very in-depth, that helped me to go in deep with not only myself, but my relationships, and to do some work and see what's going on and how I could empower myself to actually move through a lot of the conflicts that were coming up with my partner and within myself. So I love self-work. I love inner work, reflection. I think it's the best way for us to take back the power. It can feel helpless sometimes when we're in these patterns, these negative thought patterns and belief systems. And so I really believe in doing the inner work, going in and peeling back the layers to see what's going on. I also get some of my experience from being in a long-term relationship of about 7 years now. In my relationship, we have gone through a lot of transformation, and we've broken a lot of barriers down so that we could connect better, communicate better, and ultimately foster this really nice safety and love in our relationship. So it really feels like we are a team, which is awesome. It's not perfect all the time. I would never say that. I would never say we're the perfect couple. We never fight. We never have arguments or stress. That's not true. We have all of the normal stress, the normal stuff that comes with any relationship, but we've learned to navigate it in a way that is supportive. For the most part, we definitely have moments where I still am like, what the fuck is going on? I need help. We need help. It totally happens. So there's no shame in having bumps in the road as we navigate our relationships. In fact, those bumps can be revealing about what needs to be addressed, what needs to be looked at so that we can shift it and transform it into a dynamic that supports more connection, more love, more safety, more support, all of these things. For today, we're going to be talking about something that has been on my mind lately, maybe because I've been feeling it, and I just really like to talk about whatever is like on my mind. I like to put it out there on this show. So today's topic is feeling lonely even when we're in a relationship. This background feeling of being alone, of being on your own, having to do things on your own, that we can have even when we're in a relationship. Now, if you look up loneliness within a relationship on Google, you will see some answers around, are you in a long distance relationship? Because that could explain it. Are you arguing a lot? Are you in a really stressful life transition? That definitely can create these feelings of loneliness, of being alone, even though you're with another person. What I really want to talk about today is this sense of loneliness that we actually create within ourselves. And I'll tell you how we do that. But I want to address that aspect of loneliness because I believe it is the aspect that we can transform, is what we create, we can break down. And so I'm going to get into that in today's episode, how we throughout our lives can actually create this sense of loneliness and isolation, what I will call emotional self-isolation. Now, how that can manifest, how it can feel in your relationship, of course, varies from person to person. But you might notice that you're having these thoughts of, well, I always have to do everything on my own. Nobody is here to help me. Feeling like your emotions are not important, that they're not met, that you can't reveal parts of yourself because you're afraid that they might not be met with love, that your emotions could be met with disdain, with being attacked. The term suffering and silence, that comes up for me. We're not revealing how we are suffering to our partner. We don't feel like we can verbalize how we feel to our partner. You might feel like you are not known for who you truly are, that there are parts of you that are not known to your partner. And there can be feelings of resentment around all of these things, around feeling alone, feeling unimportant, feeling unmet. All of these things can build up other emotions like fear, grief, sadness, resentment, anger. In general, there will be this aversion to expressing our emotions or being vulnerable with our partner. We might not know why. We might not even notice that it's happening. These are some ways that feeling of loneliness might manifest in your thoughts, in your feelings, in your behaviors, your emotions. But how do we actually create this sense of loneliness within ourselves? It all goes back to early childhood, like a lot of my episodes do. We're going back to early childhood, infancy. It could even be later years, preteen, young adult years. Or we can form this isolation, this loneliness with a traumatic experience, particularly painful breakup, an experience with a family member. Trauma from a very intense experience could also cause us to create this isolation within ourselves. But I am going to stick with mostly the childhood conditioning aspect. So why would we want ourselves to feel lonely? It seems counterintuitive, but it's not actually that we want that. What happens is if we grow up in a household where it doesn't feel safe to express our emotions and to be vulnerable. And when I say safe, I don't just mean physically safe, like we would be attacked physically or abused that way. I am talking about also emotional safety. So if in times of vulnerability, of expressing your emotions, you were shamed, you were laughed at, you were treated with disdain, with judgment, with anger, if you were yelled at for crying, for being too much, for expressing yourself, if you were ignored when you expressed yourself, that would be quote unquote unsafe. As children, we are constantly wanting to make sure that we are taken care of and loved by our parents, by our caretakers, could even be our siblings. We're constantly looking for ways that we can make sure we are taken care of and that we are loved. So if we are noticing that when we express ourselves, it makes our parents turn away from us, it makes our parents attack us, we feel ignored or quote unquote unsafe, then we would stop doing that. The child sees, when I do this thing, when I express my emotions and when I am vulnerable, which by the way, it takes courage and bravery to be vulnerable. When I do that, it's not okay. It is not received well by my parents, the people who take care of me, who make sure that I stay alive. So we are not wanting to push our parents away with our inconvenient emotions and expression, and therefore we might start to shut that shit down. Children are very crafty with the ways that they ensure their survival. All living beings are wired to survive, and children are no exception. In fact, they can be quite brilliant in the ways that they make sure they are taken care of. And this is one of those ways. So again, when the child sees that emotional expression is not safe, the child will begin to use certain methods to make sure that they are not unsafe in that way. And one of the things that a child might do is to start creating this hard outer shell around their emotions, around their vulnerability. So this child over and over again is shown it's not okay to be emotional, to express how we feel because it's not met with safety from our parents. So when that happens over and over and over again, it becomes a pattern that is hardwired into the system. And it follows us throughout our childhood where we are just trying to protect ourselves. And we find that this is the safest way, is to guard myself with this really thick wall, this hard outer shell. This is the best way for me to get through life because it is the least painful. It is what ensures my survival. Even if having that hard outer shell doesn't actually feel good, which for the most part it won't, especially later in life, it won't feel good to have that hard outer shell. But the child isn't thinking about that. The child is thinking about survival. So over time, like I said, that pattern gets built into the system. Over and over again, we are learning that this is not okay to express. This is not okay to express. I can't be vulnerable. And it just keeps getting pounded into our brain that it's not okay. You better do whatever you need to do to never be vulnerable emotionally and probably physically too, but we're talking about emotions here. The interesting thing here is that we will, with that shell that we're creating, we will also create these different personas that go along with that shell, these identities that coincide with what we're learning in that pattern. So we might create a false self, is what I've heard it called, or this false persona that goes, oh yeah, I don't need other people to help me. I can do this all by myself. Yeah, I don't care if anybody knows that I'm suffering. It doesn't matter to me. Nobody's going to help me anyway. And so we create these identities within us that go along with our belief system. And so we can actually live into the belief system by taking on these personas. My persona personally was, I am very strong. I don't need anybody's help. I don't suffer the way other people do. And I don't need anybody to come in and be with me and help me and listen to me and see me. I can do this all by myself. You could probably see too how that persona, the one that's going, oh, I can do this all by myself, she is almost proud of herself. That's like almost the good girl in me is kind of going, oh yeah, look at me. I do it all by myself. I don't need anybody's help. And so the identity becomes so strong because we are living into it. We might be getting positive feedback around these personas. Oh, look at Kelby. She's so independent. She doesn't need anybody to help her. She's got it all on her own. And so we end up with these, again, hardwired personas that we live into so that the belief around being alone and not being able to rely on anyone, so that is true. So that remains true in our mind. We become disconnected from the truth that human beings actually do need each other. And we do need to be able to rely on each other. We are social creatures. We thrive when we're able to express, be vulnerable, and be met in our vulnerability. That's what creates connection. So we actually cut ourselves off from the truth that we need that. We need that reliance on other human beings, community, We need love. We need to be seen, to be accepted for who we truly are, not the person that we are pretending to be, not those false personas that we brought in to convince the world that we're so tough and we don't need anybody's help, for who we truly are. A lot of the time, there are a lot of emotions that are wrapped up in this belief that we are alone and we can't rely on other people. So when we isolate ourselves that way emotionally, we end up with this kind of ball of emotions that are attached and shrouding that part of us, these personas that we've created. When I have dove into my own stuff, and when I've helped my clients through this, a lot of the time there is resentment that we had to hide ourselves. We resent the fact that nobody saw us for who we were. And we perceive that nobody cared. And so there are these other emotions, anger. There's a lot of the time sadness, deep sadness that I was never met with love and care when I was emotional, when I was crying, and when I was very upset. I was not met with compassion. So there can be grief, sadness, fear, the fear of, oh gosh, what if I am vulnerable? What if I do express this part of myself to my partner? Will they leave me? Will they know what to say? Will they know what to do? Will it create this issue? Will it push them away from me? Will I be abandoned if I express this part of me? Will I be criticized? Will I be judged by my partner? That doesn't matter if your partner is the kindest, sweetest, most loving person in the world. What we're doing here is we're taking the emotions that we felt around expression in our childhood and we are applying them to our partner. So everything we felt with our parents, our caretakers, our siblings, oh, I can't express myself, that's not safe. The subconscious mind takes that feeling with our parents and our caretakers and just applies it to our partner. It sees it as the same thing. The subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between love from our parents and love from our partner. It's the same feeling of deep love to the subconscious mind. So again, it doesn't matter if our partner is going, oh, please tell me how you feel and I love you so much and saying all the right things. If we don't know how to express ourselves or we're so scared to express ourselves, we will ultimately have to go in and do some digging around to see what is going on and how can I move through this. I can tell you from experience that we might not even know how walled off we are, how little we are being in vulnerability with our partner, how much we are holding back from expressing, from saying. I realized with my partner when I started to build my business, how much I was holding back as far as expressing my fear and my nervousness and my worry around creating a business, around creating this show, around posting on social media. I had a lot of fear and I was just not telling him. And so from his perspective, it probably looked like, oh, Kelby is doing great. She's so confident and look how she just takes everything on and doesn't complain. And then in my world, it was like I'm suffering alone and, no fault of his. It's interesting how when we hold back those emotions and we're not expressing how we feel, our partner might have no idea what we're going through because we haven't told them. And we might have become very adept at pretending. So putting the mask on, again, that persona of, I don't need help. I'm fine by myself. And we become these actors in a way, and we're acting out anything that is in line with our belief of not being able to trust and to rely and to express ourselves. So to sum all of that up, where does this feeling of loneliness come from? Well, it usually can come from our childhood, where we learned to protect ourselves in a particular way that at the time might have been quite crafty, quite impressive for a child. And yet, when we bring it into our adulthood, into our relationships, those same modes of protection act as a block that keeps our partner from being able to actually see us, to hear us, to know us at a deeper level. How can anybody know you when you've got an ironclad lock around yourself, your being? It's impossible to penetrate these walls that we have created for so long. There's so many layers. If we were taught over and over again, or if we perceived over and over again that we could not express our emotions, there will be plenty of layers, and that can lead to this, thick outer shell. That's very difficult to get through, especially for our partners if they have no idea what's going on for us. I want to talk about the cost of not addressing these feelings of loneliness, the cost of keeping on our armor, that outer shell, and allowing ourselves to continue feeling this loneliness, this isolation. Like I said, this hard outer shell, these personas that we have created over time, will eventually act as a wall between us and our partner. And it's a self-created wall. And so that's good news and bad news. It can be frustrating to know that our biggest obstacle a lot of the time is ourselves. And also, it's a good thing because it means that we have the power to dismantle the wall that we've built. We can go in and with curiosity kind of pull the strings and see, oh, what does this one lead? What is this one? What does this part of me feel? Why am I afraid of this? We can go in and excavate the situation and understand how to move through it with time and with patience and compassion. Human beings, we were made for vulnerability. We were made for reaching out and asking for help and for being expressive, for showing the world who we truly are. That is something that is very important to the human race. This is what moves us forward, is creating that connection. And in our relationships, don't we all want to feel more connected to our partner? Well, connection starts with vulnerability. And it's actually kind of this fun mix of elements. So connection and vulnerability are tied together. There's also trust in the mix and safety. So if I am vulnerable and I express myself to you, can I trust that you will meet me in safety and compassion? And therefore, we will build our connection. Doesn't always have to look that way, but that's how it feels for me. We have these really cool elements that, they're not always in order. First comes trust, then comes compassion, then comes connection. It's just that they're kind of all, it's like a web. They're all connected that way. If you have spent a lifetime feeling unseen, feeling unheard, feeling unimportant, vulnerability and being met with compassion, that is the super highway towards feeling seen finally, feeling important, feeling like you matter, like your voice matters, like you matter, and like you matter to your partner. You are seen by this other person who I assume you love deeply. If we don't address that hard outer shell and that loneliness, we might also notice that there's a lot of shame that comes with it. And shame is the killer of love and of connection and expression and being alive. Shame, we all live with shame. It's not to say like we're going to get rid of it completely. Shame will be there. And isn't that fun? But it's not to say we're trying to get rid of shame, but we're just noticing, what elements of shame are shrouding your loneliness. Do you feel ashamed that you don't know how to reach out? Are you feeling ashamed that you are alone, quote unquote, alone? Do you feel ashamed that you were never received for who you are, that you're hiding parts of yourself, that you actually have to conceal parts of yourself? Is there shame in that for you? And so these are all of the things that we kind of risk, for lack of a better word, when we don't address the loneliness and the self-isolation the emotional self-isolation that we can create through our lives. I want to explain a little bit about how I have experienced moving through this loneliness, which I still have come up from time to time. First things first, are you able to move through the process of addressing your feelings of loneliness, of emotional self-isolation with compassion and with some acceptance? What can help to support that is to actually go in and notice where this part of you stems from. When did you learn that it wasn't okay to be vulnerable? And what were the messages around that? What are your beliefs around emotional vulnerability? Is it scary for you? Is it dangerous? Does it feel, sometimes for me, it feels silly or stupid, and I can feel like I'm going to be mocked or humiliated. So, can you go in and kind of understand where these things are coming from? And from there, can you build in some acceptance for why you might have started to isolate yourself as a child or due to a traumatic experience? Oh, yeah, I created this persona that felt like she could do it all by herself because that's how I felt as a child, that I had to do it on myself, and that if I asked for help, I would be ignored or I would be humiliated, I would be attacked. So can you go in and look at your actual story and see where does this come from? Now, the compassion and the acceptance, these things take time. It's not that you maybe sit down and think about it and then immediately bring in the compassion, but these are definitely some elements that we want to move through this process with self-compassion and understanding as we start to dig in and unfold and allow these things to unfold with time. What were you protecting as a child? What part of you were you protecting by building this hard shell? Were you protecting your joy? Were you protecting your light? Were you protecting this soft inner part of us? It's like a candy, this soft inner part of us that a lot of the time we are protecting. Another element to starting out this process is checking in and seeing if you're even able to verbalize how you feel. For me, oh my God, I can't even tell you, in my earlier relationships, I never said how I felt. I actually felt like I had a wall, maybe an energetic wall that was blocking my throat so that I physically felt like I could not verbalize how I felt. I also didn't really know what words to use to describe it. So that's another element. Do you feel like you can even express, even in your own private space, can you express how you feel? Or are you at that level of being blocked like I was and still am in ways where the expression is that part is hard in itself, even without another human being? I forget which book it was in. Might have been Body Keeps the Score, where the author talks about how it's really important to be able to actually say what you feel. Can you name, oh yeah, I feel grief, I feel sad? Or do you have this layer of numbness around your emotions that could be for preventing you from expressing and knowing how to actually express yourself? That is a huge component. And I would actually say before you get into working with your partner or working on any other element of this process, can you sit with that first? So the compassion and that element of being able to put words to what you're feeling and then verbally express them. You might even practice on your own, just picking a time in your day where you're checking in and going, how do I feel right now? Can you find the words to describe how you feel? Is there numbness? That's okay. Can you notice if there's numbness? Can you notice if there's nothingness? That's another part of us that we build in as a child in order to not feel pain, in order to survive. We build in a layer of numbness a lot of the time that could be blocking some other layers of emotion underneath that. So when you get pretty good at this, you might even be able to go, oh, I feel this right now. And then underneath that, there's this other emotion. And then even deeper than that, there's this other emotion. And so sometimes there's this layered process. And it's not that we have to go through all of the layers right now and heal it all right now. But, like an onion, we can slowly over time peel back these layers. And the body also knows what it can handle. So if you're doing this work and you're doing it with the inclusion of the body, which I totally recommend the somatic approach to this work, the body will know how much it can handle right now to bring up in order to be, released and shifted. When you are able to get a sense of how you're feeling and then express it, can you then move into this idea that we're going to have to push the boundaries? We're going to have to get a little uncomfortable with our partner and begin to express to them how we're feeling. And that could be when we're feeling great. It could be when we're feeling like shit and we need support. Can you kind of push the boundary of, and I've been there where I'm telling my partner how I feel and I'm just like, oh, this is so fucking yucky. I feel like I'm totally judging myself as I go through expressing, and I am just mortified. And yet I choose to do it because I know that I'm flexing the muscle, like going to the gym, and it's uncomfortable doing those Romanian deadlifts, and yet I show up to the gym because I want to have stronger muscles. So it's the same thing in a relationship where it might not be comfortable to express your emotions on the onset. In fact, it can be really difficult. And it's definitely something that you want to have some patience for. I am learning to do this still every day, every single day. And I still hide a lot of my emotions from my partner. It's something that's going to take years, I assume. And yet every day I do feel freer and less alone. That's the point of this episode. Yeah, I feel less alone when I'm keeping myself open to the idea of expressing. And I also happen to have a very loving, supportive partner who does meet me in my emotions with plenty of care and understanding. So I highly recommend that too. That's a great element. When we are expressing our emotions, especially at the start, can we find a time and a place that feels safe and supportive to doing so? Probably not the best to start expressing our most vulnerable parts in the car while we're driving or while we're eating, or it definitely varies from person to person. But I, for one, definitely appreciate eye contact. I appreciate some maybe low lighting. I really want like a vibe. So definitely quiet, peaceful, and the least stressful place that we can possibly find. Maybe not in line at the grocery store. I'm going to tell you about how I'm really feeling sad that I never felt seen uh, in my childhood. Probably not the best place. So, yeah, we can actually facilitate these conversations just by setting up the actual physical space to feel safer. It's not just an emotional element, that safety. It's definitely a physical thing. And that would go for any important conversation that you're going to have with your partner. I would say make sure that it's in the right context, physical context. I want to offer a practice from my training that is very supportive in getting the ball rolling and expanding our boundaries around expression. It's a very simple 3-step process. And I recommend that you try doing this maybe in the evening as you're winding down. Maybe you're in bed and it's just the two of you. It could be anywhere. It could be in the morning. You choose how to go about this. But what this process is, it's called desires, fears, and loves. And each of you will have a turn to share what do you desire, what do you fear, and what do you love. You can go about this in several different ways. I have worked with my clients by timing each piece. So 2 minutes of desires, 2 minutes of fear, 2 minutes of love. Or you could just share one thing for each piece. And so an example could be, I desire to build more connection with you and to feel more connected in our relationship. I am afraid that we might not stay connected and that we will lose each other, and be on our phones all the time. What I love about you and our relationship, you could choose either one. What I love about you is that you are so supportive to me and you make a point of giving me a hug every time you come home, etc., etc. This is a really nice process to do in extended timing too. Like if you want to do 5 minutes for each one, I've actually had tears come up while doing this process because we just don't really think to share these things a lot of the time. These three things, what we desire, what we fear, and what we love, those are very vulnerable aspects of ourselves that we're revealing to our partner. It might seem basic, but it actually can feel quite open, and it's kind of nice to get to share those things and kind of feel that weight lifted off. I, of course, would also recommend working with a coach like myself or a therapist to help you go in and take a look at what's going on for you around vulnerability. What did you go through as a child that led to some of the patterns that you are recreating in your adulthood and your relationship? It can be pretty easy to talk about this stuff. Oh, yeah, just go in and look at your shit from your childhood. Done. But it's not really like that. We certainly can do a lot of this work on our own, and there are many different frameworks that we can use to dissect our shit. It sounds kind of funny. But it definitely helps to have a person who is unbiased, who is a third party that is coming in and taking a look at everything you have laid on the table and kind of identifying, oh, I think there might be something here. And let's take a look over here and see what's underneath there. It's really cool to have somebody that kind of takes your hand and helps you to walk through. It's not a person that's going to do the work for you. It's not a person who's going to tell you how to do it. Some people might do that. I try not to with my clients. But it's a person who's helping to reflect back to you your experience, what you have gone through, and to actually help you to clear those things from your system, from your body, because we store it all. The body keeps the score. If you've read that book, we store all of these things into the nervous system. Everything that we feel emotionally, we will feel in the body, most likely. And so, can we work with somebody who is trained to help people sift through their shit and actually create transformation? Being able to look at our own shit is what helps us to shift the shit. And to create a flower, you need the shit, but you do also want that beautiful flower that comes from it. And so you're not alone. You're not the only one in this world who has conditioning, who has shit. You certainly are not. We are all dealing with our own conditioning. We all grew up with conditioning. It's not all bad. Some conditioning is good. Some conditioning we want to hold on to, and it helps us shape our values. And other stuff we probably want to let go of. For example, that feeling of loneliness. Do we want to feel like we have to do everything by ourselves? I don't want to feel that. I don't want to feel alone and like I have to deal with all of my emotions by myself and I can't be supported by my partner. My partner wants to help me. My partner wants to be there to see me, to hear me, to cheer me on, to see the real me, not some persona that I created because I thought I had to. And I didn't know there was another option. I want to reach out for help. I'm tired of being in this pattern where I'm alone and I can't rely on other people. It's not true. It's not even true. That's the worst part about some conditioning is that it might not even be true, these beliefs that we have. Is it true that I can't rely on anybody else? No, it's really not. It might be true that I can't rely on certain people. And yet there are others who I can rely on. It's totally a possibility. And so can we work on going in and looking at our beliefs around vulnerability and be able to move through this lonely feeling that we're carrying around? It's a really heavy load to carry. We shouldn't have to go through our life carrying that load, wearing that armor that's so heavy and uncomfortable. Think of like a knight in their metal armor just clinking around, and it's like so inconvenient and it's to protect us from battle, but I'm not in battle. I'm just out here living life. Like, I'm in a loving relationship. So I want to take off my armor now. I'm tired of living my life like I'm in battle. So that's the episode for today. How we create our own loneliness, how we will instigate our own feelings of isolation, not being able to rely on others. Yeah, a lot of the time we are the root of the problem. The call is coming from inside the house, is what I think of with this one. We have the power, though, to transform that. If we keep blaming other people, well, my partner makes me feel lonely when he does this, this, and this. Doesn't mean we can't have that conversation, but if we can stop with the blaming and start taking accountability for the stuff that we have created. It's not easy. It's not always fun, but it doesn't have to be hard. It can be actually quite satisfying too. And it's empowering is the best part, that we get the power to go in and actually create transformation within ourselves by looking at this conditioning. If you are feeling this sense of loneliness, this sense of, I have to carry everything on my own, I am available to work with. I help my clients with this isolation feeling all the time. And it is really cool to see them move through it with their own wisdom. A lot of it is me just helping you bring out the stuff that you already know. It might just be buried deep down in the subconscious. And I simply am helping you to bring it forward and to live into who you truly are, and to make contact with the parts of yourself that are in there and want to come out and want to be expressed. Liz Gilbert in Big Magic, it's a great book. She talks about how we all have these jewels hidden within us, and we can actually go in and find them. And that's kind of what I help my clients to do. You can also find me on Instagram and TikTok. I am at Coached by Kelby, and you can reach out to me via email if you'd like to work with me, or if you just have a question that you'd like for me to answer on the podcast anonymously. You can email me your questions, your comments at coachedbykelby@gmail.com. I would love to hear from you there. And I also would love to see you on social if you're on Instagram or TikTok. Thank you again for listening, and I look forward to seeing you on Friday.